Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. You're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
Another Binibining Pilipinas grabbed the headlines this morning by winning our second Miss Globe title.
At least 8 people died and several were wounded in a crash at a Astroworld music festival in the southern U.S. state of Texas.
What we do know is that
Back here in the country, COVID alert level system will be fully implemented by December 1st.
And Swedish pop sensation ABBA made a comeback with their new album Voyage, nearly 40 years after they split up.
First to the good news, another Binibining Pilipinas grabbed the headlines this morning by winning our second Miss Globe title. She was chosen the Miss Globe 2021 in Tirana, Albania. The eloquent Miss Maureen aced the question and answer segment of the pageant when she was asked, "Do you think beauty is a merit and how can we enrich it with our values?" She answered, quote, "I think beauty comes from within. To be a Miss Globe is to be a beauty that inspires. What makes it beautiful is our smiles, what we do for our community, how we give back to others, and how we carry ourselves through life. I believe that everyone has beauty inside them and believe it's our duty to share it with the world, give back, and to truly inspire others," unquote. Now, that answer gained applause and approval not only from the 10-member panel of judges, but from her co-candidates as well. Miss Maureen was formerly Miss Arizona USA 2015, and she joined the Binibining Pilipinas this year, taking home the Binibining Pilipinas Globe crown. Montaigne's win comes on the heels of Cinderella Faye Obenita's triumph at the Miss Intercontinental exactly a week ago.
At least 8 people died and several were wounded in a crash at the Astroworld Music Festival in the southern U.S. state of Texas Friday night. Houston Fire Chief Samuel Peña said the incident began at around 9 p.m. when the crowd began to compress towards the front of the stage. Take a look.
that we had at least eight confirmed fatalities tonight. 8 confirmed fatalities, and we had scores of individuals that were injured here in this event. We had an attendance of approximately 50,000 to the Travis Scott Astroworld Festival event. What we do know is that at approximately 9 o'clock, 9:15, the crowd began to compress towards the front of the stage, okay? And that caused some panic, and it started causing some injuries. People began to fall out, become unconscious, and it created additional panic.
All of those questions are being looked at. Tonight's focus, though, needs to be on the families and on the lives that we lost, many of them extremely young, tragically young.
Around 50,000 people were in the crowd at American rapper Travis Scott's Astroworld Festival. Now, the Houston Chronicle reported that Scott was on stage when the incident occurred and stopped his act on several occasions when he saw fans in distress near the stage. Houston police said they were investigating the cause of the mass casualty incident and looking at video footage from the arena. Authorities later said the festival has been canceled and will not continue on Saturday. Footage from NRG Park circulating on social media showed scores of people pushing or rushing the gates, with security at the gates unable to contain the flow. Several people could be seen falling over, bringing metal detectors down at the arena entrance, but it isn't clear if that incident was linked to the deaths. However, authorities said more than 300 people were injured throughout the day at the event, including those with minor scrapes and bruises. Astroworld is a music festival created by Scott and launched in 2018.
Staying in the U.S., attorneys for Kyle Rittenhouse, the American teen who shot 3 people during anti-police protests last year, claimed he had been attacked like an animal and acted in self-defense as arguments opened on Tuesday in the politically charged murder trial. Take a look.
The first charge is charges that on the 25th of August of 2020 at the city of Kenosha in this county that the defendant recklessly caused the death of Joseph D. Rosenbaum under circumstances which show utter disregard for human life. This is a crime which is literally known as reckless endangerment of the, reckless homicide of the first degree. The fourth count charges that at the same time and place, the defendant caused the death of Anthony M. Huber with intent to kill that person. This is a charge literally known as intentional homicide of the first degree.
Mark Richards, representing the then 17-year-old who killed the 2 men and wounded a third with his assault rifle at the August 25, 2020 protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin, depicted Rittenhouse as under mortal threat from demonstrators. Rittenhouse is charged with 5 felony counts, including first-degree homicide and attempted homicide, and the misdemeanor illegal possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18. The shooting arose after anti-police protests erupted in Kenosha when a white policeman shot a black man, Jacob Blake, several times in his car during an arrest, leaving him paralyzed. Days of protest turned violent at night with buildings and businesses looted and burned. Rittenhouse's case has drawn national attention. His critics say he represents armed vigilantes on the right who police allegedly permitted, if not encouraged, to take the law into their own hands against protesters.
Opening arguments began Friday in the trial of 3 white men charged with murdering an African-American jogger, with prosecutors saying they had no valid reason to pursue him and defense attorneys claiming they were just trying to make a citizen's arrest. Gregory McMichael, 65 years old, a retired police officer, his son Travis, 35, and their neighbor William Rody Bryan, 52, are facing murder and other charges for the February 2020 shooting of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery. Take a look.
It's about Travis McMichael's duty and responsibility to himself, to his family, and to his neighborhood. And it's about your duty and responsibility as jurors. The state talked about actions based on assumptions. I'm going to talk about facts. Facts in this case. Travis McMichael is 35 years old. He's single, and he has a 5-year-old son named Everett. He was a boarding officer in the Coast Guard, which means he was authorized to make arrests. He was authorized to do investigations. He was authorized to do searches. He was authorized to use his weapon.
A graphic video of the shooting of the unarmed Arbery went viral on social media and added fuel to last year's protest against racial injustice sparked by the murder of George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, by a white police officer in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The 3 defendants contend they mistook Arbery for a burglar in their Georgia neighborhood of Satilia Shores and invoked a since-repealed state law that allows ordinary citizens to make arrests. Prosecutor Linda Dunikowski dismissed those claims and walked the jury, made up of 11 white people and a single black person, through the events that led to Arbery's death. Dunikowski said that McMichaels, who were armed with a shotgun and a handgun, and Bryan chased Arbery in their pickup trucks through their neighborhood based on assumptions and driveway decisions. Local prosecutors prosecutors for whom former police officer Gregory McMichael had worked for a long time did not make any arrests in the case for nearly 3 months. It was only after the video of the shooting was leaked online that the case was transferred to state police and charges were filed.
In other news, after a series of high-profile murders of women in London in recent months, there's been a surge in women's self-defense classes. Here's Janelle Ann Kasuga for the report.
Metropolitan Police. On a dark autumn evening, first-timers arriving for self-defense classes at Urban Fit and Fearless are asked if they have had any past traumas before they started training. Let's listen in.
I feel really unsafe in London at the moment. I felt Sarah Everard's death really strongly earlier this year, and it's the first time I've grown up in London, and it's the first time I've ever really felt unsafe on the streets, and I felt like I needed to do something about it and take back a bit of control.
I think a lot of women at the moment, especially living in London, are pretty shaken up, and it's getting darker nights and things like that. Like, I know a lot of friends that kind of openly talk about how worried they are or how they don't feel safe. So it's definitely in the back of my mind, and I think something like this is definitely going to help, and I would encourage kind of other women to get involved to help
After a series of high-profile murders of women in London in the recent months, the number of young female participants joining the class is high. The disappearance of Sarah Everard, a 33-year-old marketing executive, as she walked home in South London in March, sparked renewed anger and concern about women's safety. A Southern Metropolitan Police officer later admitted to kidnap, rape and murder, and was sentenced to life imprisonment. Everard's murder came nearly a year after two sisters, Bibba Henry and Nicole Smallman, were stabbed to death by a man in an attack in a northwest London park. In September, a schoolteacher, Sabina Nessa, was found dead in another park in the southwest of the British capital. A man has later been charged with her murder. All three high-profile killings have fueled calls to combat male violence against women, and spurred demands for better safety for women and girls in public spaces. 2/3 of the mixed class of 26 are women. Dressed in lycra and tracksuits, they could be meeting for boxing, yoga, or any other exercise class. But implied throughout the training is the possibility that the techniques the students are learning could one day save their lives. It was common to see an increase in students joining classes following violent events. Bonafeu was first exposed to the Israeli fighting system Krav Maga that he now teaches during commando training in the French army. Over the decades, he had seen the number of women learning the self-defense system rise dramatically. Increasingly, the mothers of young teenage daughters were getting in touch to inquire about classes, said Bonafeu, a trend he has attributed to fears following Everard's murder. Among the students at his Wednesday night class was one 16-year-old female student who had brought herself to the self-defense sessions on her own initiative. Another instructor, Di Lobowitz, who runs a separate women's-only self-defense class in Vauxhall, also in London, said she had seen a big rise in inquiries. Lobowitz, who has been an instructor for 5 years, took up Krav Maga while travelling in Cambodia to protect herself. The former schoolteacher said she and her students felt Sabina Nessa's death particularly keenly. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Janelle Kasuga. We live in interesting times.
Democrats rescued President Joe Biden's faltering domestic agenda Friday, passing a giant infrastructure package that is one of the pillars of his $3 trillion economic vision after rebel moderates had earlier blocked a vote on his social welfare expansion. Take a look.
I'm asking every House member of the House of Representatives to vote yes on both these bills right now. Send the infrastructure bill to my desk. Send the Build Back Better bill to the Senate. Let's build an incredible economic progress. Build on what we've already done, because this will be such a boost when it occurs.
On this vote, the yeas are 228 and the nays are 206. The motion is adopted.
The $1.2 trillion plan provides for the construction, modernization, and maintenance of thousands of miles of roads, bridges, dams, locks on rivers and canals, as well as the construction of cycle paths and footpaths and investment in airport projects. Passenger rail transport would be modernized, including the creation of new links between cities, some of it by high-speed train. High-speed internet access, which is expensive in the United States, would be extended to rural areas with new regulations to lower prices or help families who cannot afford it. Thousands of miles of new power lines would be built with energy produced from renewable sources. Investments are also planned in new technologies such as CO2 capture, clean hydrogen, and nuclear energy.
And closing a mass climate protest in Glasgow, Swedish climate campaigner Greta Thunberg said that pledges from some nations made during COP26 to accelerate their emissions cuts amounted to little more than a 2-week-long celebration of business as usual and blah, blah, blah. Take a look.
The COP has turned into a PR event where leaders are giving beautiful speeches and announcing fancy commitments and targets, while behind the curtains, the governments of the global north countries are still refusing to take any drastic climate action. This is no longer a climate conference. This is now a global north greenwash festival. A 2-week-long celebration of business as usual and blah, blah, blah. We are tired of their blah, blah, blah. Our leaders are not leading. This is what leadership looks like.
Now, students were out in force, with some schools allowing pupils to skip lessons to see the march, and one young green warrior holding a placard that read, "Climate change is worse than homework." Delegates from nearly 200 countries are in Glasgow to hammer out how to meet the Paris Agreement goals of limiting temperature rises to between 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius. The first week of talks saw countries announce plans to phase out coal use and to end foreign fossil fuel funding. But there were few details on how they plan the mass decarbonization. Scientists say it's needed. 2 days of demonstrations are planned by activist groups to highlight the disconnect between the glacial pace of emissions reductions and the climate emergency already swamping countries around the world.
A massive explosion at a petrol station in Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, killed at least 80 people, burning people in cars and streets nearby, according to a rescue worker and a nurse on Saturday. A nurse at a hospital where the victims were taken confirmed the number of dead, adding he had also tended to many women, men, and children with serious injuries. According to witnesses, the accident happened when a vehicle caught fire in a petrol station after a road accident. The flames then spread in the area, burning people in cars and on roads nearby. Now, Sierra Leone's Vice President Mohamed Julde Jalloh had arrived on site on Saturday.
An Iraqi protester was killed and more than 100 people injured on Friday as police clashed with demonstrators, venting their fury over last month's election result, according to medical and security sources. Take a look. Denounced as fraud. On Friday, hundreds of Hashid supporters rallied in Baghdad near the Green Zone, a high-security district that houses the U.S. Embassy, government buildings, and the Election Commission. The election, which was staged months ahead of schedule, came amid widespread frustration with Iraq's political elite. Turnout stood at 41%, the lowest level since the fall of Saddam Hussein following the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Hi, I'm Alex Calleja, isang podcaster, YouTuber, writer, director, at isang stand-up comedian for more than 12 years. Ang sarap maging komedyante sa Pilipinas, no? Dahil paborito ng mga Pinoy, pagsaluhan ang mga nakakatawang eksena sa paligid. Pero dahil sa pandemic, ang kulitan, naging online na lang. Naranasan mo na ba to? Ginising ka ng nanay mo para tanungin lang kung anong oras ka gigisingin. Pero masaya talaga pag sabay-sabay tayong nagtatawanan sa mga videos na gaya nito. Ito pa. Ito pa. At ito pa. Kaya naman, heto na ang funniest Nakaball Videos. Ang natatanging show na bubusugin ang buong sambenan sa katatawanan. Ito ang bagong tambayan ng buong pamilya at barkada. Mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes nyo kami makakasama tuwing 4:30 p.m. Dito lang sa Net 25. Dito, mapapanood natin ang best comedy videos na hinanap pa namin sa kasuluk-sulukan ng internet. So ano bang hinihintay nyo? Join na sa pinakabago at pinakamasayang afternoon habit ng tawanan at kulitan, ang funniest Nakaball Videos.
Welcome back to the news. Both the Department of Health and Malacanang on Friday said the downgrade of Metro Manila's classification to Alert Level 2 underwent evaluation and was based on metrics. Speaking in a palace briefing, DOH USEC or Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergara said the COVID Alert Level system first tested in Metro Manila would be expanded nationwide by December 1st. Take a look.
Naglagay na po tayo ng schedule ng lahat ng areas in the country kung saan sila po ay makakasama na dun sa implementasyon nitong shift in policy. So meron na po tayong areas ngayon na bago na makakasama sa pilot implementation next week and then hanggang sa dulo po ng Nobyembre. Pagdating po ng December 1, buong populasyon na po or buong areas of the country will be part of the shift in policy at mag-uumpisa na po tayo ng full implementation nito. So ang kinokonsidera po natin dito would be nakita natin in NCR when we started off, it was effective. Nakita natin na pababa ang kaso because of these different interventions and sinunod na po natin ang ibang lugar. So ang aim po natin, maipalawak po natin ang implementasyon sa buong bansa by December 1.
The Philippines on Friday lifted restrictions on national obsessions like karaoke and basketball in the capital, Manila, and reopened universities in the megacity of 13 million people as virus cases eased there. Cases have fallen from a high of 2,000 average daily cases in Manila last month to an average of just 493 cases per day. The new guidelines are in place until November 21st, but officials said they could be extended if the number of new cases and hospital admission rates continue to fall. Contact sports like basketball, the national sport, karaoke bars, and amusement park operations were allowed for the first time since the Philippines began imposing lockdowns early last year.
Staying in the country, the Department of Health is in favor of mandating vaccination for sectors that are at most risk of getting COVID-19. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergara said the proposal is still being studied as a law must be passed first to make vaccination compulsory. Let's listen in.
Vaccines work individually, but this time, because of this disease, kailangan po hindi lang individual ang may bakuna. Kailangan we will reach that certain protection across the population. No? Yung tinatawag na herd immunity o yung population protection. So para magawa po natin yan, kailangan mahikayat pa natin lalo ang mga tao. And this dito po pumasok yung pag-uusap tungkol sa mandatory vaccination. Not to impose on certain sectors, but to impose on specific sectors that which are vulnerable at saka nag-face talaga sila ng mga tao pag nagtatrabaho sila. So ito po ay pinag-uusapan lahat. Of course, we will heed to that statement of the Department of Justice, si Secretary Guevara, na kailangan ng batas. Kaya yan po ang pinag-aaralan natin sa ngayon with IATF. But definitely, if we are going to have this as parang mandated na for specific sectors only, DOH will also support this because we need this so that we can achieve yung protection for the population.
Now, Vergara noted that the government is exerting all efforts to encourage more people to get inoculated. They can still see some level of hesitancy among the public. Among the factors influencing them range from fear of side effects, brand preference, and getting swayed by misinformation circulating on social media.
Children aged between 5 to 11 years old receive a first dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine in Los Angeles, days after the vaccine gained authorization from the Food and Drug Administration. Take a look.
Count to three. Ready? You would kind of still get it, but you wouldn't get really badly sick.
You have a 95% chance of not getting it.
I'm excited, so we can start returning back to normal life. We've been waiting for both of my sons to get vaccinated, to be able to just feel comfortable doing everyday things.
Scared because my sister was screaming and I thought it would hurt, but it didn't hurt.
Hopefully a little bit of peace of mind, I guess, being able to, interact more freely around people and just not to worry about everything that much.
I want my mask to be off and just want normal life to come back.
I'm so happy that they finally approved the vaccine for her age group. She's the last one in our family to get it. So, like she said, it'll be nice to get back to, more normal life. And we have plans already to go to Disneyland, to go see Hamilton.
Stop.
Okay.
Count to three and then be ready. Remember how easy?
10 seconds.
Can I clean your See? See? All done.
Meanwhile, U.S. company Ocugen announced Friday that it had asked authorities for emergency use authorization for COVID-19 vaccine Covaxin, which was developed in India for ages 2 to 18. Ocugen's data gathered from clinical trials conducted outside of the United States with only a small group of children may not be enough for the Food and Drug Administration to grant the request. Covaxin, developed in India by Ocugen's partner Biotech, gained emergency approval from the World Health Organization on Wednesday and has already been cleared for use in 17 countries. The immunization uses inactivated virus technology common in other childhood vaccines, including polio shots. The approval request is based on results from a study of 526 kids between ages 2 and 18, 2 doses of Covaxin 28 days apart. Pfizer's shot is the only one approved in the United States for children under the age of 18, and health authorities cleared the way this week for 5 to 11-year-olds to receive the vaccine.
Meanwhile, Pfizer said that a clinical trial of its pill to treat COVID-19 had shown it is highly effective, hailing it as a big step toward ending the pandemic. Take a look. A simple pill to treat the coronavirus at home has been sought since the start of the global health crisis. And so far, all treatments have been either intravenous or vaccine shots. Pfizer's is in the second anti-COVID pill after that of Merck, which is actually an influenza medicine rebranded to fight the coronavirus. Pfizer's has been created specifically to fight COVID. The Pfizer drug, called Paxlovid, achieved an 89% reduction in risk of hospitalization or death among adult patients with COVID who are at high risk of progressing to severe illness. Besides Pfizer and Merck, the Swiss pharma giant Roche is also working on a COVID pill.
The rising number of cases of COVID-19 in Europe is of grave concern, and the region could see another 500,000 deaths by early next year, according to the World Health Organization on Thursday.
The current pace of transmission across the 53 countries of the European region is of grave concern. COVID-19 cases are once again approaching record levels, with the more transmissible Delta variant continuing to dominate transmission across Europe and Central Asia.
The organization said with 78 million cases in the WHO's European region, which spans 53 countries and territories and includes several nations in Central Asia, the cumulative toll now exceeded that of Southeast Asia, the Eastern Mediterranean region, the Western Pacific, and Africa combined. Kluge blamed the soaring caseload on insufficient vaccination coverage and the relaxation of public health and social measures. He said hospital admission rates were higher in countries with lower vaccination rates. Measures like testing, tracing, physical distancing, and use of face masks were still part of the arsenal in fighting the virus. The World Health Organization also said that Europe and Central Asia could see another 500,000 deaths.
According to one reliable projection, if we stay on this trajectory, we could see another 500,000 COVID-19 deaths in Europe and Central Asia by the 1st of February next year.
The number of new cases per day has been rising for nearly 6 consecutive weeks in Europe, and the number of new deaths per day has been rising for just over 7 consecutive weeks, with about 250,000 cases and 3,600 deaths per day, according to official country data compiled by AFP. Over the past 7 days, Russia has led the rise with 8,162 deaths, followed by Ukraine with 3,819 deaths and Romania with 3,100 deaths, according to data.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization said that Europe has seen a more than 50% jump in coronavirus cases in the last month, making it the epicenter of the pandemic, despite an ample supply of vaccines. WHO Emergencies Chief Dr. Michael Ryan called for European authorities to close the gap in vaccinations. Let's listen in.
Roller coaster where we're not seeing the same increases in hospitalizations as we saw earlier in the year. A smaller number of cases is placing an even greater burden on the system because the systems are tired. The people in the system are tired. They're still fighting very hard, but it's very hard for them to be able to react in the same way. It is very difficult to sustain the kind of effort that's needed on everyone's part, on the part of health workers, on the part of communities, on the part of government. There's exhaustion, and exhaustion is leading to complacency, and complacency is leading to gaps in our system, gaps in testing, gaps in clinical management, gaps in vaccination. And it is through those gaps that we see transmission. It is through those gaps that we see the hospitalizations and the deaths, and we need to close the gaps. We only have to look at the roller coaster epidemiologic curve to know that when you're coming down the mountain, you're usually about to go back up another one, and the fact that Europe is climbing that mountain again should really stand everybody up around the world and say, what are we going to do? Because Europe does have the capacity, and European countries have the capacity. They have the vaccine access. They have the money. They have the systems in place that they can react. Many other regions don't necessarily have those capacities in place. So I think it's a warning shot for the world to see what's happening in Europe despite the availability of vaccination.
EU's most populous country, Germany, set a new world record for daily infections with nearly 34,000 new cases over the past 24 hours, according to Robert Koch Institute. Croatia also hit a daily record with 6,310 people testing positive, following in the footsteps of Russia, which has repeatedly shattered its own records in recent weeks. The WHO's Europe chief expressed grave concern, as we heard earlier, over the rising pace of coronavirus infections in Europe, warning that according to one reliable projection, the current trajectory would mean another 500,000 COVID deaths by February.
President Joe Biden delivers remarks on the October jobs report. Biden hails what he calls a historically strong recovery spurred by massive government stimulus spending and rapid deployment of vaccines.
Americans are getting back to work. Our economy is starting to work for more Americans. Thanks to the economic plan we put through in Congress earlier this year and a successful vaccine deployment, America continues to add jobs at a record pace. In this historically strong recovery, unemployment rate has fallen again today, down to 4.6%. This included a substantial drop in unemployment for Hispanics, which was much needed.
But the data showed there were still 4.2 million jobs missing from the economy compared to February 2020, before the world's largest COVID-19 outbreak began, a sign of the rebuilding yet to be done. The numbers of permanent job losers and people on temporary layoff changed a little over the month and remain higher than before the pandemic, according to the report. The labor force participation rate indicating the share of the people in the workforce working or looking for a job was unchanged in October at 61.6%. Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Hi, I'm Alex Calleja, isang podcaster, YouTuber, writer, director, at isang stand-up comedian for more than 12 years. Kaya naman, heto na ang funniest Nakawall Videos! Ang natatanging show na bubusugin ang buong sambayanan sa katatawanan! Ito ang bagong tambayan ng buong pamilya at barkada. Mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes nyo kami makakasama tuwing 4:30 p.m. Dito lang sa Net 25. Dito, mapapanood natin ang best comedy videos na hinanap pa namin sa kasuluk-sulukan ng internet. So ano pang hinihintay nyo? Join na sa pinakabago at pinakamasayang afternoon habit ng tawanan at kulitan, ang funniest Nakawall Videos!
How do you find that concept or that area where you gusto ko i-innovate ito?
Sometimes it just clicks. Maraming nag-audition. Tapos pinili. Tapos inayos.
When you say inayos, ayusin mo ang face, pagagandahin mo, ipapa-acting mo.
Hindi ako yung ordinary viewer. When I watch something, parang pinuproduce ko siya palagi.
Best work in terms of ratings and profitability. Is there something really that you can say original talaga? No.
Hindi. Nagawa na yan eh. When you talk to me and ask me to contribute concepts for the platform, how is your branding as a network? What is your personality as a network? What do you want to be? Gusto ko yun kasi challenge yun.
All these in this episode of Open for Business.
I
I would not consider myself either or neither expert or newbie. In this craft, you're a lifetime student.
Hindi ito tungkol sa away o digmaan. Ito'y tungkol sa hilig at talento na pwede ring pagkakitaan. Ako po si Robin Padilla at ito po ang unlad. Kaagapay, kahanap buhay.
Welcome back. Now in sports. Julius Randle posted a game-high 32 points as the New York Knicks rallied from a 21-point first-half deficit to beat the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks 113-98 on Friday. The Knicks outscored the Bucks 94-60 over the final three quarters to snap a two-game losing skid in front of a crowd of 17,300 at the Pfister Forum. Randle went 11 for 22 from the field and added 12 rebounds, while R.J. Barrett finished with 20 points to record his fifth straight game with at least 20 points. Derrick Rose came off the bench to score 23 points as the Knicks dominated the Bucks 54-28 points in the paint. Giannis Antetokounmpo led Milwaukee with 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. Elsewhere, Kevin Durant scored 29 points and added 10 rebounds as the Brooklyn Nets won their fourth straight game, holding on to beat the Detroit Pistons 96-90. Durant also had 5 assists, and LaMarcus Aldridge had 16 points for the Nets, who had to stave off a fourth-quarter Pistons rally for the win. Durant became the first player in Nets history to score at least 20 points in the first 9 games of a season. Blake Griffin added 13 points and Bruce Brown chipped in 10 for the Nets. James Harden finished with 13 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists, but also committed 9 turnovers.
Finally, in our news, Swedish pop sensation ABBA made a comeback on Friday with their new album Voyage, nearly 40 years after they split up, delighting fans but leaving critics divided.
I never thought there would be an ABBA reunion. I've been saying that in interviews for years. I've been writing it in my books, that's never going to happen. So I'm just as surprised as anybody. And I'm really, really happy for them that they wanted to do it, because it's obviously, they don't need the money, so it's not about that. Well, it still feels a bit unreal, to be quite honest. It's like, a new ABBA album. Is that really happening? But having listened to it, 2 or 3 times now, I quite like it, actually. They have nothing to be ashamed of. It's been seen through with dignity, and it's not going to harm their legacy or anything like that. It's a bit, ABBA, they represent good songwriting, like quality music, and it's all about melody, melody, melody. They just throw all these melodies at whatever they're working on. And if you compare it to the music you hear in the charts today, they're not so much about strong tunes. They're more about sounds, attitudes, choreography, production,
The group finally announced the reunion and new album in September and released the singles I Still Have Faith in You and Don't Shut Me Down. The 10-track Voyage is not all the group will be releasing. They will also unveil digital avatars dubbed avatars at a concert in London in May, resembling their 1979 selves. The holograms are the product of a years-long project designed in partnership with a special effects company of Star Wars creator George Lucas. We
It
will
sounds good.
definitely have new karaoke favorites very, very soon. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. It is the weekend. Please enjoy. I am CJ Hero. The news continues on Monday.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back on Monday. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live in interesting times.
Malalayong lugar ang kanilang narating para maghanap buhay. Tulungan ang pamilyang iniwan sa sariling bayan. Yan ang ating mga overseas Filipino worker. Pero dahil sa di pangkaraniwang pangyayaring hatid ay krisis, may ilan sa kanilang nagpasyang umuwi. Pinagyaman ang sariling lupain, nagtayo ng negosyo na kasama sa puhunan ang sipag at tiyaga. Ang mga OFW, maraming sakripisyo, ninanais maging kapaki-pakinabang maging sa kanilang pagbabalik bansa. Sapagkat ang ating mga bagong bayani, Pilipino pa rin sa puso at damdamin.
Tropical cyclone o bagyo. Ang bagyo ay isang uri ng lagay na panahon na nagdudulot ng malalakas at mabibilis na hangin at pag-ulan na maaaring maging sanhi ng matitinding pagbaha, daluyong ng dagat at pag-uho ng lupa. Narito ang mga dapat gawin bago dumating ang bagyo. Una, alamin ang balita ukol sa panahon at mga anunsyong pangkaligtasan. Alamin ang plano ng komunidad sa pagbibigay babala at paglikas. Suriin ang bahay at kumpunihin ang mga mahina at sirang bahagi. Ihanda ang gobag na naglalaman ng mga pangangailangan ng pamilya. Ilikas ang mga alagang hayop sa ligtas na lugar. Kapag inabisuhan ang kinauukulan, mabilis na lumikas sa itinakdang evacuation center. Narito naman ang mga dapat gawin habang may bagyo. Una, maging mahinahon. Manatili sa loob ng bahay o evacuation center at makinig sa pinakabagong balita at taya ng panahon. Patayin ang main switch ng kuryente at valve ng tubig. Gumamit ng flashlight o emergency lamp. Maging maingat sa paggamit ng kandila o gasera. Umiwas sa mga salaming bintana. Ito naman ang dapat gawin pagkatapos ng bagyo. Hintayin ang abiso ng kinauukulan na ligtas ng bumalik sa tahanan. Umiwas sa mga natumbang puno, nasirang gusali at linya ng kuryente. Huwag gumala upang hindi maabala ang mga emergency services. Siguraduhing walang basa o nakababad na outlet o kagamitan bago buksan ang linya ng kuryente. Itapon ang mga naipong tubig sa lata, paso at gulong upang hindi pamahayan ng lamok.
Napapansin ba ninyo, lumiliwanag ang mundo pag magkasama tayo? Life is so much sweeter, everything feels better pag tayong lahat ay together. Let's have fun together, let's play together, kumain, magluto, matuto together, tawanan together, hawak kamay together, we'll be there for each other, we're stronger together. Kaya tara na Filipino, let's get together, let's all come alive. Kaya tara na Filipino, let's get together, Sunday 25, Sunday 25. Let's stay together, let's sing together, let's all work together, travel together, let's shop together, mangarap together. We can fly higher when we are together. Kaya tara na Pilipino, let's get together, let's all come alive. Kaya tara na Filipino, let's get together, sa Net 25. Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together, balitaan together, love each other, magsikap together, kaya tara na Filipino, let's get together, let's all come alive. Kaya tara na Filipino, let's get together, sa Net 25. Sa Net 25. Sa Net 25. Let's get together. Sa Net 25.
This is Net 25, a commercial UHF television station owned and operated by the Eagle Broadcasting Corporation, transmitting on a 50 kilowatt output with NTC permit number BSD-0184-2020-0452, authorizing this station to operate until July 12, 2023. Net 25 studios and transmitter are located at number 25 Central Avenue, New Era, Quezon City. Net 25 is headed by the following personnel, duly licensed by the Professional Regulation Commission and the National Telecommunications Commission. Professional Electronics Engineer Armando C. Bonifacio Jr., PECE 838. Professional Electronics Engineer Bernard N. Pangulayan, PECE 869. Professional Electronics Engineer Randy A. Velasco, PECE 555. Electronics Engineer Erickson D. Ventura, ECE 44844. Electronics Engineer Arturo F. Pascua Jr., ECE 43934. Electronics Engineer Adrian V. Augusto, ECE 59367. With first-class radio telephone operators, Enrico V. Erbite, 94-1RTG-7204. Gracious V. Pascual, 92-3PNCR-352. Modesto V. De Vera, 96-1PNCR-18494. Fretz C. Moliena, 93-1PVI-6551. This is Net 25. Now signing off. Ladies and gentlemen, the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y